Well, this is gonna be a hella chaotic video. What is up, mi gente? Welcome back to my booktube channel. I am XO Joe. ACOTAR, or A Court of Thorns and Roses, is a freaking loved fantasy book. It has such a huge fan base. If you are a fantasy reader, this book has been absolutely everywhere. In truth, this book has been on my TBR, off my TBR, on my TBR, off my TBR, until I was forced to read this by my boss. So no, the title is not fake. My boss literally made me read this book, and I just had to disappoint her by my ratings. I'd be surprised if you have not read it yet. There are definitely people that have not yet read it because there are mixed reviews, such as this video. This book is definitely sold as an adventure, an amazing fantasy, world building, all of that stuff. However, it got off my TBR because I just kept hearing it as a smut war. Just all the girlies screaming about all the big fae pee-pee in this book. And the more I heard about that, the less interested I became, because I was like, I thought this was high fantasy war, not a high whose pee-pee is bigger war. So this book has a ton of hype around it, and to be honest, I don't really understand why. Let's pour our drink of the day and get into it. To fuel the book rant, I even got an extra large. Just as a little disclaimer, if you love this book, I am absolutely not coming at you. I'm not making fun of people that absolutely love this book. I'm just sharing my honest thoughts because I was just baffled how people got past the first book and how this series became a thing, because the first book just felt like a super badly written fan fiction. I could not take the MC seriously. I kept thinking, how did this book get 5 stars out of so many people? If you like this book, let me know. I still genuinely don't understand how this got such high ratings, and I am in fact gonna continue the torture and continue on to book 2 because peer pressure. I heard some things about this book, mainly about how hot the fae are, about all the smuttiness in it, but not really anything else. I didn't know any politics going in here, any magical systems. I just went into the book with a really open mind, which is also something my boss desperately asked me to do. When I started this book, I thought Feyre was actually a really interesting MC. I mean, it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, which I realized last year I actually enjoyed a lot, but I quickly found out that Feyre's pretty freaking dumb. Like, I just don't understand how people absolutely love Feyre so much, where she just feels like the most annoying and dumb MC to me. I can't even hate on the other characters in this book, but if you can't stand a dumb MC, I don't think this book is for you. I just kept rolling my eyes so hard at Feyre. One of the top critiques I hear on this book is like, why is Feyre complaining when she gets this amazing high fae sugar daddy to take care of her after her sisters have been so rude, so mean, and her family was just stuck in poverty for so long? Why would she complain about gaining this mansion, painting all day, having a hot daddy? Like, it doesn't make any sense, and I would have to pretty much agree with that to an extent. I feel like I still give this book a lot of credit for world building, letting the MC slowly work through survivor's guilt and how to dream again, but overall I just didn't understand the hype between Tamlin, the hot daddy fae, and Feyre, our MC human that we're rooting for, because there was just absolutely no chemistry. Tamlin was this weird high lord, super rich, super handsome, tan character that didn't really interact with Feyre all that much. Like, they had these weird moments where they're together, but it very much reads like a teenage fan fiction. Like, you just ran into Harry Styles and you guys have this moment that's supposed to be super deep, and suddenly he's actually secretly in love with you and can't stop thinking about you, even as he's fake dating this other celebrity. There was just no actual conversation between them. I would say the only scene where I was like, okay, I could kind of see this, is when they go skinny dipping again, using his hot fae body to basically seduce Feyre. At the beginning of this book, I was giving Feyre so much respect because her family fell into poverty. Her dad is disabled and can't work, and so she's this amazing huntress. She provides for her family. Her 2 sisters that are super freaking brood. It's very clear to Feyre and the reader that her older sister Nesta highly prefers her younger sister, and they only care about each other. Her sisters grew up during the bougie lifetime, and I guess that stuck with them because these freaking girls decide to take Feyre Feyre's food money and go buy themselves some shoes. And so that was kind of the first instance that I was like, what is the author doing here? Feyre is literally malnourished. Feyre talks about how they're starving, shivering, they live in this small shack, and she's still willing to give her sisters shoe money, and her sisters are more worried about shoes. I just feel like if you're gonna make a family so poor and the author is emphasizing that they need food and they're hungry, why would the sisters care about shoes? Except Sarah J Maas over here is just trying to really drive the point that Feyre is a survivor and that her sisters are freaking nasty, but it just didn't really make much sense to me. And I feel like that's a top complaint, where what is and who is Feyre? Is she this badass huntress that the author led me to believe in the beginning, or this stupid ass character that shows up later? Because that's exactly who she became in my eyes. In this book, you're really told that Fae are evil, they really hate humanity. For me, I was freaking sus of Tamlin, okay? I just didn't understand why this High Lord would be so interested in Feyre. Some fans had the audacity to say in the reviews that she's just a freaking hot babe and that's why Tamlin was so interested in her. I'm like, y'all, the book literally says she's malnourished, so what are we encouraging here? Just saying. So you have this character, Tamlin, who is super nice for absolutely no reason, which again, that's why this book reads like a fan fiction to me, because in fan fictions, the love interest is just super nice and does unexplainable things for the MC without understanding why. And that's why things end up working out. And so if this book was just a cheesy romance or whatever, I would understand. But again, it's not. It's a highly regarded fantasy series that people freaking die for. I know a lot of people complain that this book is really slow, and it is really slow. There's not much that happens in this book for the majority of the time. Actually, I started tabbing where the plot actually begins, and you can see that it actually starts around this part of the book, and the rest of this is literally just world building and Feyre and Tamlin's relationship making absolutely no sense. I honestly am not complaining about the length of this book though, because I actually like the world building, and if you watched my review on this book, I ended up giving this book 2 stars instead of 1 star, only because of the world building. I have to say the world building was pretty fun. The courts sound gorgeous. The spring court, which is where Tamlin lives, is freaking beautiful. The starless sea or river or whatever they swam in sounded absolutely gorgeous. There were definitely beautiful scenes on here that I thought were just ruined by Feyre. I actually really like the side characters like Lucien and Alice, all the creatures inside this world. Even Tamlin seemed way more interesting to me than Feyre's. So this book is just one of those instances where it's like, great world, I think could have been a decent story, wrong MC, wrong point of view, but this fandom freaking loves Feyre, so I don't get it. But here we are. So this is the part where things actually start to happen, and y'all kept swearing, you freaking liars kept swearing to me that things would get better, and people kept saying just keep going, there's more action. It just became the most hilarious scenes ever. I did not understand. I'm serious. I do not understand the 5-star reviews. Someone explain it to me. I have read the reviews. I don't get it. I don't understand. So this is what absolutely did it for me. When Feyre has to go and complete these challenges to basically save Tamlin or solve a riddle that the author really dragged through here from this evil enchantress, Amarantha. When Amarantha mentioned the riddle, I was like, the answer better not be something cheesy like love or something like that. And I was like, Feyre's just gonna solve it really fast, but she didn't. And Feyre made it sound way more complicated than it actually was. And because our MC is so stuck on this riddle, I was like, the author is gonna have this huge gasping dramatic reveal of like what it actually is. And wow, I gave Sarah J Maas way more credit than she deserved, because that answer to that riddle was like the stupidest thing ever. I don't know why she even added it. Okay, in the first tournament, I stopped, like I literally stopped in the middle of reading to just burst out laughing. And look, I'm not the only one who thought this. Apparently it's a running joke within the fandom and people that even loved it. So Amarantha throws her in this weird pit type of maze and says, so I could feel the vibrations in the ground as whatever it was rushed at me. So it's like this freaking scary huge ass thing. Amarantha clicked her tongue and I whipped my head to her. Her brows rose. Run. Then it appeared. I ran. It was a giant worm. If you grew up my generation, you probably watched SpongeBob and grew up with it. That episode with the big giant worm and how Sandy and SpongeBob had to run away from it was the first thing I thought about. Nice to know that Sarah J. Maas drew inspiration from our generation and threw in some SpongeBob in there for the nostalgia, because I couldn't believe this was literally the first tournament in this high fantasy. It was this big worm that was following her around. I kept laughing the whole way through. Even the way the author described this scary thing, I mean, like, how can you honestly describe a worm in multiple ways that's scary? Writing prompt challenge. But here are some examples. It was a giant worm, an enormous mouth filled with ring after ring of razor sharp teeth, its pinkish brown body surging and twisting with horrific ease. And that's about it. Like, those are literally the only descriptors that we get in this book about this worm. I just couldn't believe that this is what is regarded as an amazing epic fantasy story when this is literally book one. I think the most surprising thing about this book overall was that there wasn't as much smut as I expected. So I feel deceived. I feel lied to. I really thought this was going to be an incredible epic story, and instead I got worms. The other characters just seemed way more interested. That for a little bit I was kind of rooting for Amarantha here, because she's supposed to be the super smart, badass, intelligent, cruel general. And no, I'm not actually team Amarantha here because she's pretty freaking cruel and awful. But I didn't understand how Feyre could bust her. And again, I felt like the author was just giving fanfic vibes, which is making the villain not actually smart or not seeing some things and letting some things go. Some of those things being so many people's favorite character, Rhysand is the High Lord of the Night Court, and he's considered Amarantha's little hoe bag. For being Amarantha's hoe, you would think she would keep the reins on him a little bit more and be suspicious that he was super close with Feyre and parading her around as his favorite pet, because she absolutely hated Feyre. Feyre was in love with Tamlin, Tamlin with Feyre. Amarantha was not having it because Tamlin belonged to her. So you would expect her to be pissed at Rhysand and say like, no, you can't actually have Feyre out of her cage. I want her tortured. I want her to feel like she's losing. And instead it was just Amarantha getting petty and jealous on the inside, but just being like, okay, and letting them dance and have fun while she's supposed to be a prisoner. There is something, if you've never read fan fiction or just kind of like online novels, that can be such a guilty pleasure to have. There is this common thread in all of this that I've noticed, which is the male character randomly is buying the love interest a spectacular dress so that she's all dolled up and makes everyone at the dance, the ball, the premiere, the dinner so jealous because he shows up with this gorgeous creature that was thought of as not good enough for him or underrated or ignored. It's kind of like this Cinderella moment, and maybe that's where we get it from. I could not believe that this renowned, like amazing, beloved author had that scene in here. Rhysand and Feyre make this deal to save her life, and randomly the next day fairies come to pick her up and start to wash her down and paint her body all gorgeous and give her this dress that barely covers any of her. And Feyre literally says, from the neck up I was regal. My face was adorned with cosmetics and my hair was coiled around a small golden embedded crown, and they placed me in a gauzy white dress, if you could call it a dress. So she shows up to this party with Rhysand and she doesn't even understand why. She's like, why am I going to this? He's like, oh, I just need an escort for the party. She literally says, is this necessary? And I annotate, no, it's not freaking necessary. Why do we need these chapters? So we have a few chapters actually where Rhysand is taking Feyre out to a party. He's literally parading her around in front of Amarantha, and again, absolutely makes no sense. I was like, so we just want to flex how hot Feyre actually is. Then we get to the second one, which if this doesn't seal how stupid of a character Feyre is, I don't know what is. So here we go. Like, bear with me. I mentioned it to some people on Bookstagram and a lot of them claimed to have forgotten the way this scene was written. How did Feyre help her family survive if this is her way of thinking, her strategy in her brain and her noggin? So she has 3 lovers. Feyre is actually illiterate. Amarantha is being being super rude and holding this against her. So she literally knows Feyre can't read. She puts instructions on how to actually pull these levers and pick the right one. Obviously Feyre can't. I don't know how you would approach coming to these levers where you don't understand the words because it's in a foreign language or you just can't read them. I just thought this was the most ridiculous way to go about it, but I reached a hand toward the levers and stared at the 3 numbers beyond my trembling fingers. 1, 2, 3. They meant nothing to me beyond life and death. Chance might save me, but 2. 2 was a lucky number because that was like Tamlin and me. Just 2 people. 1 had to be bad because 1 was like Amarantha, solitary being. 1 was a nasty number. 3 was too much. It was 3 sisters crammed into a tiny cottage, hating each other until they choked on it, until it poisoned them. 2. It was 2. I could gladly, willingly, fanatically believe in Cauldron and Fate if they would take care of me. I believed in 2. 2. So she believed in 2 because of her and Tamlin. Because they're 2 people. These are the lines from the greatest book ever. Like, these are the lines that have people quivering. It makes me wonder, like, how did this same character who has this logic also killed that huge Fey wolf and had this strategic, amazing mind to narrow down the best way to do something? Like, I understand she's hunting her whole life, but that gives her experience, this process of elimination. This was just the dumbest paragraph I read in this whole entire book, and there are some pretty dumb lines in this book. She reached for the lever, and no, she didn't pass this. Rhysand actually helped her out. Then we have all of these nonsense, no reason to have them make out scenes between her and Tamlin, then her and Rhysand after she goes to her third party. I have to say that the last trial was pretty good. It was really interesting. What ruined the final trial, because it was pretty epic and heartbreaking, what ruined it was like she finally solved this difficult riddle that's been plaguing her for 3 months. And can you guess what that was after the author dragged us through Worm and Lever and a pretty good third trial? The answer was love. I don't know what to say, you guys. That was the big, huge reveal at the end that was supposed to leave us absolutely shocked in our fantasy-loving pants, because that was the big reveal. That's what the author dragged us through this whole book, to have Feyre finally realize that she loves, even though the whole time she was literally sacrificing herself to prove that she loved Tamlin. That didn't prove that she loved Tamlin. Solving the riddle and saying love is what actually solved the thing. Rhysand has this suspicious glimmer in his eye, but when it starts to get a little bit interesting, it's over. So if there's one thing this book definitely gave me, it's hope that I can publish my own book, and it reads like a weird fan fiction in the first book, but the rest are better, or so I hear, and so I can still gain a huge following, or that my characters would be hot enough to excuse the poor quality of my writing. I swear, if they weren't as hot, or if this weren't a pair romance, would this succeed? Like, would this live on and move forward? Because I just think it's the fact that they're super hot. I mean, even in the curse that's built into this book, Tamlin and Lucien and his core are stuck with permanent masquerade ball masks. Like, they can't remove them. And the reason Amarantha did that to them is so that a human girl couldn't break the curse simply because she fell in love with his face. But God forbid she puts on a chastity belt on him or something that would cause Feyre to not fall in love with that good Fae Levin. Feyre could still see his killer jawline and his tan skin and his like 8-pack abs and his elongated eggplant. I was again promised that the second book would be more amazing than the first. I don't know if I trust. I'm pretty suspicious. Still, I'm gonna go into number 2. People are wondering if my rating is going to change once I get into A Court of Mist and Fury, and I did buy it. I am gonna get into it. I'll let you know what I think, or if my rating changes. Feyre keeps being this dumb MC that just doesn't make any sense. I highly doubt it. My boss was a little sad that I didn't absolutely adore this book. But she also gave me the task to basically binge Court of Mist and Fury in a day. So yay. I am really curious about this series though. I'm not gonna lie. I am not interested in Feyre. I'm still really sus about Tamlin. I am curious about Rhysand and why he had that look in his eye. But I will give kudos on that world building. It's been a while since I read this book. I feel like the rantness isn't as fresh as I would like it to be, but it's still there. If you enjoy this and you want to see what I think about this series moving forward, please subscribe, like, and comment, all of those good things that really help out this channel. Thank you so much for watching and hanging out, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. I really don't get it.